In the opening of the book of Revelation, Jesus reveals himself to John as being the Alpha and the Omega. Probably we're already aware that Alpha is the first letter of the Greek alphabet and Omega is the last letter, and they roughly correspond the Alpha to the A in the English alphabet and the Omega to the O, I guess would be the closest equivalent in the English alphabet. Well, in Greek, it's the first and last letter, which we're going to study in this lesson. And we could ask ourselves, why would Jesus choose to describe himself that way? It's because he's the beginning and the end. Verses like those in Colossians chapter 2 tell us that Jesus is the creator of all, that everything was made for his purposes. Revelation also says he was the lamb slain from the foundation of the world. He gives the creation meaning and purpose. He's the beginning of it all. It's all for him. And the Omega. He also is going to have complete say over how all of this ends. He's the creator. All of creation has to do with him, and he's the one who's going to determine how it ends with his glorious millennial reign, something that we're looking forward to as believers. But Jesus is the Alpha and the Omega. He's the one who gives meaning to everything. And in this lesson, we are going to study the Greek alphabet, particularly so we can have a better grasp on God's Word. The very word where we receive this description of Jesus, I am the Alpha and the Omega. So, in order to start out, we have to be familiar with the alphabet. All of us remember quoting the alphabet in our elementary years, maybe our kindergarten years when we were learning the alphabet. Well, the Greek alphabet corresponds pretty closely to the English alphabet. I'm going to go through these one by one. And we'll talk about some of them in more detail. And I'm also, though I am not a singer, I'm going to sing the song just to help you review and memorize these letters. But we'll go starting with Alpha. It's the first letter. It looks kind of like our A. Then we've got Beta. That looks like something like our B. And then we've got Gamma. That's the equivalent of the G sound in English, Gamma. And then we've got Delta. That looks a lot like the small d. And then we've got Epsilon. Looks like a capital E, and that's the rough equivalent as the E sound. Then we've got Zeta. This is like Z in English. And then Eta. This is kind of like E. This is more of a long E sound. Maybe a diphthong every once in a while in English, like an AI sound. But the pronunciation of Eta would be A. And then we've got Theta, TH sound. Then we've got Yoda, an I basically. Kappa looks like our K. Has the same sound. Next letter is lambda, ul sound. Mu is the next letter. Doesn't really look like our M, maybe kind of an inverted M missing one of its loops, but this would be the M sound. It's a mu. And then we've got nu. It looks like our V, but try not to let yourself be confused. This is not a V. It's the nu. It has that N sound. And then we've got xi. This is the rough equivalent of the X sound. In modern Greek, it has more of an F sound, but it's between an F and an X in its pronunciation. It's the Xi. Then we've got Omicron. Well, no surprise here. It looks just like our O. It has the same pronunciation. Maybe a little softer than the omega at the end. Our O in English can have a long or a short sound, like most of the vowels can. But in Greek, there's two extra vowels, so we'll look at these in more depth in a second. But Omicron. Then we've got Pi. This is famous because of its description, its use for describing a circle. It's a geometric value. But this would be the pi. It has the P sound. Right after it comes the rho. That looks like the P. But that is the R sound. It's a rho in Greek. Now we're at the end of the line, and we've got sigma. There are two ways to write sigma in the Greek language. The first one that looks like an O with a little curl at the top, a little line at the top. That is the sigma as it will appear at the beginning of words, and if the sigma appears anywhere in the middle. The sigma that looks a little more like our S is the sigma that will end a word. And so the Greeks, just to help maybe prevent confusion or in reading and writing, they distinguish these two sigmas. But they both have the same sound value, the same alphabetical value. And then we're down at the second line here, tau, looks like our T. Upsilon, that looks like and sounds like our U. And then we've got a new letter, kind of a fun one to look at and write, phi. This is, again, like the F sound, phi. Next comes the chi, C-H-I, chi. It looks like our X, but it has more of a CH sound. In Greek, it probably is a little more guttural than just a hard CH as in Christ. Maybe a little more like a little bit of a use your throat a little more. But anyway, as long as we think of it as like a CH kind of sound, we'll be fine. And then we've got psi. It kind of looks like a pitchfork, doesn't it? Psi, that's a PS sound. And then comes the last letter, omega. Well, you probably noticed all of these letters, they look a lot like, or at least are very familiar for other reasons to us, for the sounds they're associated with. We've got alpha, beta, delta, epsilon, iota, kappa, lambda, omicron, pi or p, sigma, tau, and upsilon. They look just like the letters that we use in English, and they have the same sound values too. And it's for this reason that when we start off in Greek, we can be encouraged, because it's not quite like learning Hebrew where everything is brand new, plus you have to read from right to left. No, there's a lot of overlap here, and these are all letters that are very similar in the English language. Here are the vowels. What do you think of the vowels in English? We've got A, E, I, O, and U, right? Well, there they are in Greek, and there's not much of a change. Alpha, epsilon, iota, omicron, upsilon. And there's two more, eta and omega. These, so there's 7 vowels in Greek, and eta is in English that we think of the A sound as a long E, or sometimes a diphthong like I mentioned. But it has a whole separate letter in Greek, and then the omega is the long O sound. So there's 7 vowels in Greek, and we're going to become very familiar with all of these letters this year. Let's talk about a few of the rules of pronunciation. In this PowerPoint, this will cover weeks 1 and 2 for our online class, because I think we can condense some of this. This is basically an overview. One thing that we're learning about, or we will learn about, is the diphthongs. A diphthong is a combination of 2 vowels that have one sound value. They're pronounced together. A word ude, which means no or not, or and not, it's a negation. It starts off with an omicron and an upsilon. Ude, it would be pronounced. Diphthong, remember, it's 2 vowels pronounced together, so it's not like aude, aude. No, it's just ude, because it's a diphthong. So a diphthong is a combination of 2 vowels that are pronounced together. We're also going to see the Yoda subscript a lot this year. The Yoda subscript is when the Yoda, which is basically the I in the Greek language, is subscripted underneath a vowel. And it will only subscript under vowels, and it will only subscript under long vowels. Omega is a long vowel, eta is a long vowel, alpha can be a long vowel, and those are the 3 main letters that you'll see the Yoda subscript underneath. It'll always be underneath, it'll always be small, and it will not affect pronunciation. In other words, we shouldn't try to pronounce it. It's hidden in its pronunciation, kind of like it appears hidden in its writing. Now, I will say one thing. It's very important to interpretation, because there is a Yoda there, and we don't want to ignore it. It affects the understanding of the word. And here it's auto. Auto, this comes from autos, it means he. And as it appears underneath the Yoda, the omega here, that tells us as interpreters, okay, this is autos, but its case is dative, which means generally we provide a prepositional word like to or for in front of the translation. So this would be something like to him, and it wouldn't affect pronunciation. It would be auto, just like it looks. Alpha and upsilon there, again, that's a diphthong. Those 2 can be pronounced together. We'll also be introduced to the smooth breathing mark and the rough breathing mark. The breathing marks only occur on words that begin with vowels, and there's only 2 kinds. There's the rough and then the smooth. There's also the circumflex. If you look up at auto, the word we just looked at, it has the circumflex above it. That basically means there's a very slight rise and fall in the same syllable, something like auto. But since it's so slight, we're not going to emphasize it this year. Plus, pronunciation is not a major concern with translators and interpreters. The main concern for us is being able to identify the word and translate it correctly. Pronunciation is helpful for memorization, but it's not a major issue within translation. In any case, this first word, apostolos, has the smooth breathing mark. Smooth means it doesn't really affect the sound of the word. Apostolos, just like it looks. And the rough breathing mark here occurs before the or above the omicron in hora'o. The rough breathing mark has a rough sound, hora'o, which is the H in English, kind of rough breathing as you start out the word, hora'o. So we'll want to remember what the smooth and the rough breathing marks are and what they mean. The smooth breathing mark is curled towards the right, and the rough breathing mark is curled towards the left. Apostolos, smooth breathing mark, and hora'o, rough breathing mark. The breathing mark will always occur right above the first vowel of the word, and it will only occur with words that start with vowels. Syllabification is something that we're going to meet too in these early chapters. I never as a teacher make a big deal about syllabification. The pronunciation and syllabification are important to the extent that we'll be interacting with the text and we want to know basically how the words sound. But I will say there's a debate between how to even pronounce the words. You've got modern Greek, and then you've got something that's called the Erasmian Greek. It's more of a traditional understanding of the language, more of a Western, I will say, also understanding of the language, where it seems to me like we're kind of imposing rules for pronunciation in our language over to Greek. And people use both. In the U.S., more than anything, the Erasmian pronunciation would be used. And if you listen to the recording by Spiros Audiades, who is a native Greek speaker, you can note the differences. I won't make a big deal about it this year, but we can talk about some of the rules for syllabification these first couple of weeks, and we're going to move on and just get right into translation issues and things. But anyway, a couple of things that will help us. Take a word like ake ka amen. It would be broken up this way: ake ka amen. And the biggest rule is that there is one syllable, one sound, which includes a vowel sound, in every syllable. So, the other thing is that each syllable will end with the vowel sound if possible. There's a few other rules that will not make that possible. But we'll end with the vowel sound if we can. So if you look at the first one, we don't want to end with ak because that would end in a consonant. But we want to end ke. Again, we're ending with a vowel sound, right? Ke, ka. Now, the vowel combination omicron and alpha in Greek, you can't pronounce those together. In English, we have words like boat, and it forms a diphthong. Not so in Greek. The more we interact with the language, the more we'll see what works and what doesn't. In any case, this would be ke, ka, men. And when you're ending a word, a lot of times it's not possible. You're not going to just cut off that last consonant nu. Remember, it looks like a V, but the sound is n, as in an N. We're not just going to cut off that nu because that by itself isn't a syllable. It has to have a vowel sound as well. So if we broke up this word, as you'll see in the book, ke, ka, men. If we have a word like arches, we have a consonant, what's called a consonant cluster. We've got rho and the ki. The rho looks like the P, but remember it has the R sound. And then the ki, arches. We would draw the syllabification line right between the rho and right between the ki, arches, because you can't pronounce urka together. In other words, you don't have any words that start with a rho and a ki. Even in English, we have no words that start with RC because that's a difficult consonant cluster that can't be pronounced together. Well, when that occurs together, we'll draw a line between the two. And we have two syllables here, arches. And then the last one, we've got ethe asametha. We draw a line right after that first epsilon, the. Again, in English, we have diphthongs like ea, as in the word great. Ea has that A sound. E and A, or epsilon and alpha, in Greek, are not pronounced together. So they'll be separated. We have the, a, sa. You might say, well, why do we divide then the sa sound or the sigma there? Why don't we put it with the first alpha? Why not? Why does it have to go with the second alpha? Well, that goes back to the rule that syllables, if possible, each syllable will end in a vowel and not in a consonant. So we'll leave the first alpha all by itself. We have the, a, sa, me, tha. And again, we're seeing overall that each syllable ends with a vowel sound. There will be more that we will need to say in regard to the alphabet and the rules of pronunciation and things. We'll talk more about these in our online session. I want to leave by enchanting you, and that's quite the overstatement. Like I said, I'm not a singer. But with the song for the alphabet, maybe it'll be ringing in your head and help you remember these words, or these letters. Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, Yoda, kappa, lambda, mu, nu, xi, omicron, pi, rho, sigma, tau, upsilon, phi, chi, psi, omega. This is the Greek alphabet.